The great glass showroom of Falk Automobile had never been this silent. 200 of the most important people in the German motoring world stood frozen beneath the 40-foot glass atrium. Journalists with their recorders still running, rival dealers, the marque's regional director, a row of city dignitaries. Champagne flutes halfway to their lips, and not one of them was breathing. Under the brushed steel letters bolted above the delivery ramp, the words the family had sold cars beneath for 40 years, Ein Falk hält, was verspricht. A Falk keeps its promise. The 40th anniversary gala that the motoring press had flown in from across Europe to attend had simply stopped. On the little stage beneath the spotlights stood a young man in a tailored midnight blue suit, a set of keys in one hand and a microphone in the other, and his hand around the keys had gone white. And beside the gleaming flagship, revolving slowly on the turntable, in the plain gray suit of a first-week trainee, a service cloth still folded over one arm, stood the old man they had spent all week calling the temp, the quiet new hire they had ordered to fetch coffee, move floor mats, and stay off the sales floor whenever a real buyer was watching. He was not shouting. He was not even angry. He simply crouched, opened the driver's door of the car the whole room had come to worship, ran one thumb along the inside of the door frame, where a small stamp should have been and was not, then took a worn steel feeler gauge from his pocket, slid it into the seam along the edge of the flawless hood, where it sank far, far too deep. And into the shocked hush, he said the words that would end Maximilian Falk's entire world. Stop. Every car you have been sold under this roof is lying to you. And I would know. Measuring the distance between a promise and a paint job is my job.
A phone lay face up on the podium, its screen still glowing from the call that had just ended. The call that had turned the most powerful people in the room the color of ash. The Marquis' regional director would not lift his eyes. The dealership's finance chief had gripped the edge of the display plinth to stay on his feet. And Maximilian Falk, Max Falk, the golden boy whose face smiled from every billboard on the ring road, who had spent the whole week treating this old man like something the delivery truck had dragged in on its tires, finally understood exactly whose showroom he had been standing in. To understand how a man in a borrowed gray suit silenced the most important night in the dealership's history in front of 200 witnesses and a live broadcast to every motoring desk in Europe, and why every powerful person in that glass hall was suddenly afraid of him, we have to go back a few days to a rainy forecourt, a locked showroom door, and the first cool thing Max Falk said to the man he took for nobody. The service workshop of Falk Automobile smelled of warm oil, cold steel, and rubber, and Yusuf Demir loved all three.
He stood alone between the lifts in the gray light before the showroom opened, 61 years old, lean and unhurried, with reading glasses pushed up into short iron gray hair and a diagnostic tablet resting in one steady hand. Around him rose the quiet architecture the guests out front never saw, the row of hydraulic lifts, the tool chests worn smooth by decades of hands, the parts racks, and past them the roped-off service lane the staff called Bay 9, where the oldest technician in the building still worked the way cars used to be worked. Yusuf liked the workshop before the lights came up. Out on the sales floor, everything performed. The mirror-polished paint, the mood lighting, the smell of leather sprayed from a can. Back here, a car could not lie. It was either sound or it wasn't, and a man who knew how to listen could always tell the difference. Because the old man in the trainee's gray suit was not really a trainee. His full name, though no one in the building had any reason to know it, was Yusuf Demir, and for 35 years he had been a master automotive technician and safety engineer, and for the last 12, the senior field inspector for the National Motor Trade Standards Authority, the body that certified dealerships to carry a premium marquee, audited their safety and their books, and, when it had to, suspended the license that let them sell at all. In the small, exacting world of vehicle safety, Yusuf Demir's signature on an inspection meant one thing: that a car was truly what it claimed to be, that nothing dangerous had been hidden under fresh paint and a clean carpet. And the man whose name carried that weight was standing in a stranger's workshop in a borrowed suit, pretending to be nobody. "You can polish a lie until it blinds you," his old teacher used to say. "You cannot polish away a gap. The metal always remembers."
That teacher was the reason Yusuf was standing there at all. 45 years earlier, he had been a skinny apprentice of 16, the son of a Turkish line worker who had come to Germany to build engines he would never own, when a gruff master technician named Otto Brandt had caught him after hours retorquing a wheel that a qualified mechanic had rushed. Instead of firing him, Otto had taught him how a car tells you the truth through your fingertips before it ever tells you through a gauge. How a panel gap the width of a hair reveals a repair a whole showroom is trying to hide. How the only honest inspector is the one who checks the thing no customer will ever see. "A car is a promise on 4 wheels," Otto had told him once, pressing a worn steel feeler gauge into his palm. "It says, 'I will get your family home.' Break that promise, sell a wreck as a jewel, roll back the miles, paint over the rot, and someone's family doesn't come home. So you never sign what you haven't checked." And to every car he ever passed as truly sound, Otto pressed a second, secret promise. A tiny stamp, an oak leaf beside 2 small initials, punched into the hidden metal inside the driver's doorframe, where no buyer would look and no polish would reach. "That's my word in the steel," he'd said.
Yusuf had learned everything from him, gone on to build a career out of that one idea, that honesty is a thing you can measure, and had never forgotten who taught him. Which was why, 3 weeks earlier, 2 things had crossed his desk at the Standards Authority and made the back of his neck go cold. The first was a thin, anonymous envelope sent by someone frightened. The second was a short internal report he had pulled himself. A young family's estate car, bought certified from Falk, whose brakes had failed on the Autobahn 2 months later. They had walked away. The next family might not. So Yusuf had done what he always did when the truth was buried somewhere a letter could not reach. He had asked the authority to place him inside. Falk Automobile was hiring seasonal floor staff for its big anniversary launch. A quiet, overqualified older man on a trial contract raised no eyebrows at all. He put on a plain suit, took a trainee's badge under his mother's maiden name, and went in to see with his own eyes and his own hands what the dealership had become before he signed the paper that could shut it down. What he had not expected, walking those service bays again after all these years, was to find, still bent over a lift in the oldest corner of the workshop, the man who had taught him everything. Otto Brandt was 63 now, and still there. 40 years at Falk, master of Bay 9, the only technician left who inspected a car the slow way, by hand and by feel, and the reason the Falk name had ever meant anything at all. He did not recognize, in the stooped, gray-suited trainee sent back to observe the workshop, the skinny apprentice he had trained a lifetime ago. Yusuf had grown old too, and kept his name to himself. But Yusuf recognized him, and something in his chest both lifted and ached. At least one honest thing in this building is still standing, he thought, and had no idea yet how hard the week would try to knock it down.
Into that first gray morning, the young man who would define the week arrived the way he always did, in a wave of engine noise. The showroom's glass door was still locked when the low, furious snarl of an unsilenced exhaust bounced off the forecourt, and a matte black coupe swung across 2 customer bays and stopped diagonally over the one painted with a wheelchair. The door hinged upward like a wing. Maximilian Falk stepped out in sunglasses that mirrored the whole showroom, thumbed something on his phone, and without once looking up, held his keys out toward the nearest person in a Falk badge, which happened to be Yusuf. "Put it somewhere it won't get touched," Max said. "Not near the transporter bay.
And the coffee in the customer lounge is warm. That's on you today, yes? New faces make the coffee. And stay off the floor when the anniversary buyers come through. I don't want them talking to... He finally lowered the sunglasses an inch, took in the plain suit, the reading glasses, the gray hair. Whatever this is. Yusuf did not take the keys. I'm on the trade floor today, not valet, he said mildly. And you're across the accessible bay. Someone might need it. Max lowered the glasses the rest of the way, and a slow, delighted smile spread across his face. The smile of a man who has found something to be entertained by. It talks, he said. Listen carefully, because nobody's going to say this to you twice. There are people whose name is on the building. That's me, Falk. It's on the roof. And there were the people who move the mats and make the coffee. That's you. The mats don't get opinions, Opa. You do what you're told, you stay out of the shot, and you are extremely easy to replace before lunch. He set the keys down on the roof of a display car, right on the paint, and pushed them toward Yusuf with one finger. Park it, then coffee.
Yusuf looked at the keys sitting on the paintwork, and then at the young man, and did not reach for them. I'll move them off the paint before they scratch it, he said, and did exactly that. Lifted the keys, wiped the roof with the cloth from his sleeve, and set them gently in Max's own hand. He held the young man's gaze 1 second longer than was comfortable, long enough that something uncertain flickered behind Max's eyes, some small unease he did not like. Then Yusuf turned back to the tablet in his hand. It was the way the old man was not afraid of him that made Max decide right there to hate him. A moment later, the day's first cruelty found its real target. An older man had been waiting patiently by the locked showroom door in the drizzle, 68 or so, in a clean but well-worn jacket, a flat cap dark at the shoulders with rain, holding a folded newspaper with a car circled in the classifieds. When the doors were unlocked, he stepped inside, cap in hand, and walked straight to a silver estate car on the floor, with the reverence of a man who had saved a long time to stand next to it. This was Bruno Adler, 68, a retired tram mechanic, widowed the winter before, who had promised his late wife that when the time came, he would finally buy the safe, sensible touring car she had always wanted for their drives, and who had spent 40 years underneath vehicles and could still tell a good one by the sound of the door. "Excuse me," Bruno said to Max, politely. "This one, the certified silver estate. I'd like to take it for a test drive, if I may. I know the engine. I just want to feel the brakes and the gearbox before I..." Yeah, that's not gonna happen, Max said, without looking at him, thumbing his phone. He glanced up just long enough to price the man's jacket, his shoes, his cap. This is a 39,000 euro certified vehicle, not a Sunday amusement. He let a little laugh into it. No offense, Opa, but people like you don't test drive cars like this. You look at them. There's a used lot on the other side of town for the budget. Bruno's face went carefully still, the stillness of a proud man absorbing a blow in public, and he folded his newspaper very precisely, as if that were the only thing in the room he could still control. "I only wanted to feel the brakes," he said quietly. "And I only want you to not touch the car," Max said, already walking away. Yusuf crossed the floor before he had decided to. He did not raise his voice. He simply stepped alongside Bruno, put a light hand near the estate car's door, and said, as if to the old customer alone, "A man who wants to feel the brakes before he buys is the only kind of buyer worth having. You were a mechanic. It wasn't a question." "Trams," Bruno said, surprised. 39 years. "Then you already know more about what keeps a family alive at 140 on the Autobahn than anyone who sold a car today," Yusuf said. "Don't let a boy in a nice suit tell you what you're worth." And he looked once, calm and unreadable, directly at Max, until the young man, for reasons he could not have named, looked away first. "You," Max said, and his voice had gone to ice. "I don't know what your problem is, temp, but I'm going to enjoy watching you carry your little cardboard box out of my showroom." He lifted his phone, and out of pure spite,
photographed Yusuf's face. Smile. I'll send it straight to my father and to HR. Yusuf let him take the photograph. He had a feeling it would be useful later. He was right.
When Max had swept off toward the manager's glass office, the old technician from Bay 9 came over, wiping his hands on a red rag, and quietly set a thermos cup of workshop coffee and half a sandwich down on a tool cart beside Yusuf. "Don't let that one get under your skin," Otto Brandt said. He arrived a director and never learned to be a man. "You eatin'?" "I'll eat," Yusuf said, which was what he always said. "You'll fall over," Otto corrected, in the exact tone of a stern older brother, nudging the sandwich an inch closer. Long week ahead, and we're neither of us young. And Yusuf smiled, a real one, the kind almost no one got to see anymore. Because the man who had taught him everything about honesty 45 years ago was, without knowing it, being kind to a broke old stranger in exactly the way he had once been kind to a skinny apprentice. He did not know he was feeding the boy he had raised. That was precisely why it counted. He met the last of them an hour later by the service desk. Lena Vogt was 22, an apprentice technician on a temporary contract, checking a car in with the tight, careful precision of someone who could not afford one wrong move. Yusuf knew that posture. Someone who sent most of a small wage home, in Lena's case, to a mother and a younger brother, and lay awake at night sure that one wrong word from the wrong person would end the little foothold she had. When a floor manager snapped at her for a paperwork fault that wasn't hers, and she flinched and dropped a tray of key fobs clattering across the tiles, a colleague sighing loudly, Yusuf crouched and helped her gather them, unhurried. He asked. She whispered. "You already did the hard part," Yusuf said, ordering the fobs back onto the tray. "You walked into a place full of people who mistake a loud voice for authority, and you do the work properly anyway. That's the whole trade." He smiled. "Your hands are honest, by the way. I watched you flag that tire wear the manager wanted you to ignore." Lena laughed, startled, grateful, and something in her shoulders dropped an inch. What Yusuf did not say, because he could not yet, was that he had a very good idea who had mailed a frightened envelope full of night photographs to a government office 3 weeks before. He said nothing, but he filed away Lena's carefulness beside Otto's kindness and had no notion yet how much both would matter before the week was out. Decency, Otto used to say, is the one repair that never comes loose. It always shows up at the end when you least expect it. He had no idea how hard the next few days were about to test all of it. If you want to understand how much power a 31-year-old can have when no one has ever told him no, you only had to watch Max Falk move through Falk Automobile in the week before the anniversary gala. The good espresso machine was kept stocked for him alone. His calls were put through first. A photographer was booked for an afternoon because he wanted new pictures of himself leaning on the flagship. He had inherited a genuine name and a manufactured reputation, handed the sales floor young by a father who knew a handsome face on a billboard moved more metal than patience ever could. And somewhere along the way, he had stopped learning cars and started selling only himself. He had also, though the staff did not yet know the full shape of it, inherited a problem the size of the building. Falk Automobile was quietly drowning. 2 soft years, an expensive expansion, a mortgage against the property. The prestige was real, and the balance sheet was rotting underneath it. And everything now rode on one enormous, headline-making anniversary quarter. Max wore his certainty like his watch, oversized, always visible, telling everyone a time that suited only him. He believed the rules were a thing that happened to smaller people, the ones who moved the mats. And from the moment the week began, he made the people who actually kept the cars honest into his entertainment. It started small, the way cruelty always does. He left the saloon on the floor and, as a joke, flicked a €2 coin into Yusuf's breast pocket. "For the labor," he said. Yusuf, who could have ended the young man's franchise with a single phone call, only said, "I'll put it in the apprentice's coffee tin," and set the coin on the workshop windowsill on his way past. It cost him nothing to keep his voice level. It cost Max more than he understood to be watched that closely by a man taking notes he could not see. Then the cars themselves became the stage. Because here was the thing that truly drove Max that week. The gala had to be enormous. He had staked everything: the dealership's survival, his own legend, the numbers his father was watching, on the anniversary launching a glossy new arm of the business, the Falk Certified Pre-Owned Program. Premium used cars sold with a manufacturer-grade inspection and a badge of trust, at prices that made them almost as profitable as new. He swept through the showroom demanding more cars on the certified line, faster, cheaper to buy in, and richer to sell. He never once asked the only question that mattered, the question a workshop full of frightened professionals was too afraid to raise aloud: whether the cars wearing that badge of trust were actually what the badge promised: sound, honest, safe to put a family inside. One person had tried to ask it. Her name was Nadia Hoffman, the workshop's quality manager, the person who signed the inspection sheets that turned an ordinary used car into a Falk certified one. Yusuf first saw her on the second day, in the glass-walled office off the service lane, arguing quietly and hopelessly with the finance chief.
"I am telling you I won't sign them," Nadia was saying, keeping her voice down. "Half the cars coming in on the night transporter are auction salvage, water damaged, category write-offs, imported cheap with the histories laundered. You want me to certify them as one owner, full history, factory approved? That isn't detailing, that's fraud." "You'll sign what you're given," came the answer, smooth and final. "The gala is in 5 days. The certified numbers are already in the press pack. Do your job quietly, Nadia, and do it carefully. This quarter is spoken for." Yusuf, wiping down a bench with his back turned, went very still. Salvage. Water-damaged write-offs. Laundered? Sold as certified? He had spent 35 years building the standard that word was supposed to mean. Certified was not marketing. It was a promise that someone competent had put their hands on the car and their name on the line. Someone in this building was preparing to sell frightened families a badge of trust stamped over rusting, dangerous metal, and to launch it with fireworks at the biggest night in the dealership's history. He wrote nothing down where anyone could see, but a cold, patient anger settled into his chest and did not leave. The man who had spoken to Nadia was Conrad Falk himself, Max's father, the owner, the founder's son, the steady hand the trade press praised for 40 years of Falk reliability. Conrad was everything Max was not: quiet, courteous, gracious, unhurried. And that, Yusuf would come to understand, was exactly what made him more dangerous than his son. Max broke things loudly. Conrad broke them in a lowered, reasonable voice, with a warm hand on your shoulder, and made you feel unreasonable for smelling the rust. And the cruelty spread, the way it always does, to whoever was most exposed. That someone was Otto.
It happened at the certified line walkthrough. Otto Brandt, 40 years, the surest hands in the building, had been promised the one honor of his long career. At the gala, he was to be introduced to the press as the master behind the Falk certified inspection, the human face of the promise, and to hand the keys of the first certified car to its new owner himself. He was showing 2 junior technicians how to read the telltale tide line of dried silt inside a door sill when Max decided the old man was boring his guests. No, God, listen to him," Max said, loud enough for the visitors drifting past, pulling out his phone to film. "This is supposed to be the shining moment of the whole launch, and we've got Grandpa here giving a lecture on dirt. Say something for the camera, old-timer." Nothing? He circled Otto with the phone,
while the old technician stood with a torch frozen in his hand, too proud to perform, too dignified to answer, his jaw tight. Yusuf crossed the lane before he had decided to. He stepped between the phone and the old man, not roughly, just decisively, and rested one hand on the door sill. He's showing them a silt line, the mark standing water leaves inside a panel, he said quietly, as if to Otto alone. It's the one thing a flood car can never hide from a man who knows to look for it. He isn't lecturing. He's the only person in this building who can tell you which cars will get someone killed. He gave Otto a reason to lower the torch with his dignity intact, and crouched to point at a scene that needed no pointing. Then he stood, turned, and looked once, calm and unreadable, directly into Max's phone, until the young man lowered it without quite knowing why. "You," Max said, and his voice had gone to ice. "I don't know what your problem is, temp, but I am going to enjoy watching you clean out your locker." He lifted the phone again and photographed Yusuf's face. "Smile. I'm sending this to my father right now."
Yusuf let him take the photograph. He had a feeling it would be useful later. He was right. He was not finished. Cruelty, once rewarded, always spreads to whoever is bravest as well as whoever is weakest. And when Lena quietly brought Otto a cup of coffee afterward and murmured that filming him wasn't right, one of Max's floor managers overheard and reported it, and Max turned the full weight of his boredom on the girl. "Did the little apprentice have an opinion?" he said, finding Lena at the service desk. "What's your name?" "No, don't bother. There's no point learning it. You're a temp on a 3-month slip. One word from me and you never turn a bolt in this city again, or the next one. That's how it works, sweetheart. I don't remember your name. I don't have to. That's the whole point of being me, and the whole point of being you." Lena's eyes filled, but she did not look away, and she did not apologize. Yusuf watched a frightened young woman hold her ground for an old man who could do nothing for her, and felt the last of his patience turn into something harder and more useful. Later, passing the desk, he said quietly, so only she could hear, "You did the right thing, and whatever you already sent to the people who needed to see it, you did right there too. Keep a record of what you see this week. Dates, plate numbers, transporter times, exactly as it happens, and keep it somewhere that isn't this building." Lena went very still and looked at him with something between fear and hope, and did not ask how he knew. "Why?" she whispered. "Because," Yusuf said, "people who write things down are much harder to erase than people who stay quiet." That evening, Yusuf watched the machine of it all lay itself out clean. Max had not merely insulted him, he had humiliated a loyal old master technician, threatened a frightened apprentice, and above them both, a courteous owner was quietly preparing to sell rebuilt wrecks to trusting families and call them certified, because a dealership that needed the money and an heir who needed the headline had decided together that the biggest night in 40 years was worth not asking too loudly what was actually under the paint. He was not raging, he was charting, and a man who charts is far more dangerous than a man who shouts. Late that night, when the showroom was dark and the last of the staff had gone, Yusuf did 2 quad things. First, he let himself onto the certified line with a spare key from the board and walked the row of gleaming cars with a torch, and by its narrow light, he found what he feared. 3 of the freshly badged Falk certified cars had the faint high-tide silt line dried inside their door sills, the telltale cloudy fog deep in a headlamp lens, the powdery green bloom of corrosion budding on a connector plug where no 2-year-old car should have any at all. Water cars, write-offs, wearing a badge of trust. Second, he crouched at the driver's door of the crowning centerpiece, the flagship saloon set on its own plinth, the one Max meant to unveil as the jewel of the whole program, opened it and ran his thumb along the inside of the doorframe to the spot where, on every car Otto Brandt had ever truly inspected in 40 years, there should have been a tiny stamped oak leaf beside 2 small initials. The metal
was smooth. No stamp. The paper file hanging in the office swore Otto had certified this car with his own signature. The steel said Otto had never touched it. Someone had forged the old man's name on a death trap. Yusuf photographed the bare door frame, noted the plate and the chassis number, and pocketed the truth. He did not yet know how far up the rot reached, but he had a feeling, and he was right. The gala was supposed to end the way every Max Falk production ended, with the press charmed, the certified numbers splashed across the motoring pages, and the anniversary sweeping to a standing ovation and a record quarter. And for a day, it looked like it would. But Yusuf had spent 35 years learning to read a car, and now, quietly, he began to read the people around it. And the story they told was uglier than any flooded wiring loom.
It came together in pieces. A word overheard through the office glass, a transporter manifest left on a printer, and the car itself, the centerpiece of the whole night, printed on every invitation and every press trailer as the jewel of the Falk certified program. A single flagship saloon, the one Max had told the trade he had personally hand-selected and stood behind. The car that proves a used Falk is as honest as a new one. The vehicle that would anchor the launch and crown him the future of the business. Yusuf had already run its plate, and when he cross-checked the chassis number against the salvage auction database the authority could reach, the back of his neck went cold for the second time that week. Because he knew this kind of car. He knew exactly what it was. 18 months earlier, it had been photographed sitting to its door handles in floodwater in another country, declared a total loss by its insurer, and sold for scrap value. Export only, not for road use. Someone had bought the wreck for a fraction of its worth, shipped it in, dried it out, repainted the visible rot, cleared the dashboard warnings, rolled the odometer back by 90,000 kilometers, laundered the paperwork through 2 countries, and dressed it up as a pampered one-owner jewel. Max Falk had not hand-selected an honest car. He had bought a corpse, put makeup on it, and was about to sell it to a family under a badge that said, "Trust me." And there, when Yusuf plugged his diagnostic tablet into the car's port in the dark, was the thing that turned suspicion into certainty. Deep in the engine control unit's live memory, in a place the odometer fraudsters never think to scrub because they don't know it records, the module had quietly logged the true operating hours and distance the whole time. The dashboard read 19,000 kilometers. The metal remembered 109,000, and a long, cold week submerged in standing water. You can roll back a number on a screen. You cannot roll back the truth the machine writes to itself in the dark. Because here was the thing the staff did not know. The dealership behind the famous name was nearly broke. 2 soft years and 1 vain expansion had run 4 decades of prestige into the ground. The reserves gone, the property mortgaged, everything propped on the promise of 1 enormous anniversary quarter. And a launch that delivered 2 headlines, a glamorous new certified program and a flagship jewel personally vouched for by the charming young heir, was exactly what would move the metal fast enough to keep the bank away. Max did not care whether a single car on that certified line was safe to put a child in. He cared that 200 journalists, a live broadcast, and a showroom full of buyers all believed it was. He was not alone in the lie. Conrad Falk, the courteous owner, the steady hand the trade had trusted for 40 years, had staked the survival of everything his own father built on the launch going through. And when his own quality manager brought him a problem, he did what men like Conrad always do. He made it disappear. The problem had a name, and Yusuf heard it spoken through the office glass the way he heard everything that week, by being invisible. "I ran the histories twice, Herr Falk," Nadia Hoffman was saying, low and desperate. "The VINs on 9 of the certified cars trace back to salvage auctions. The flagship on the plinth is a declared flood write-off with a wound-back odometer. I can prove it in 10 minutes with a scan tool.
You want me to sign a manufacturer-grade inspection certifying it as sound? That is not a house standard." And Conrad's voice, smooth and cold and reasonable. "You'll call it a thorough multi-point appraisal, which is technically true. There are many points, and you will appraise them. You will not put the words salvage or flood in any document with our crest on it, 5 days before the most important launch of my life, or you will discover that this is a very small trade, and that quality managers who cry fraud do not work in it for long. Think of your daughter, Nadia. Sign." Yusuf, coiling an airline in the dark, went very still. There it was in a single sentence. An honest woman who had found the truth and a powerful man using her child to bury it. It was every case he had ever worked, distilled. The quiet pressure that turns a good professional into an accomplice, happening in real time, 5 days before it would put families on the Autobahn in laundered wrecks.
And here the story turned, because Nadia Hoffman did not, at first, do the brave thing. She was afraid the way a single mother with a mortgage and a license is afraid, and she signed the certificate Conrad put in front of her, telling herself multi-point appraisal was a form of words she could sleep beside. Yusuf saw the moment it happened, saw the good woman fold, and did not judge her for it. He had watched fear do worse to better people. He simply noted, quietly, that Nadia had scanned and hidden a full set of the True VIN histories and the flood car diagnostic logs, instead of deleting them as she'd been told. The small, stubborn act of a conscience not yet dead. A person who keeps the evidence, Yusuf knew, is a person still deciding which way to jump. And then they came for Otto. Because Otto Brandt had scanned it too. He had put a diagnostic tool on the flagship, on the plinth, seen the same impossible history Yusuf had, and said aloud to the wrong person that he would not stand in front of a single camera and call that car certified, and that no flood write-off was leaving his workshop with a family's trust on it while he still drew breath. When the plan held and his gala moment was quietly handed to a photogenic junior, Otto refused to be silent about why. Within the hour, Max had his pretext. A customer's car in for a routine service was discovered to have been returned with a dangerously loose wheel, a near miss, a lawsuit waiting to happen, and the blame was pinned on the old master technician, who had access to every bay and had suddenly become inconvenient. 40 years erased in a single meeting. Otto Brandt was walked out of the building he had given his life to, carrying his own toolbox and a cardboard box, accused of gross negligence, endangering a customer, his final wages and his pension frozen, pending investigation.
That detail was not a small one. Otto had been promised one thing at the end of his long career, that he would be the face of the Falk certified promise and hand the first set of keys to their new owner with his own hands. The crowning moment of a life given to keeping strangers safe on the road. The same accusation that fired him for a loose wheel he had never touched took that away and handed his moment to a stranger for the cameras. So Max Falk's need for a headline had not merely humiliated an old man for boring his guests, it had thrown away the two people, a quality manager and a master technician, honest enough to say the cars were dangerous, and cleared away the last hands that might have stopped a death trap from rolling out under the family name. When Yusuf saw Otto carry his toolbox to the tram stop at the bottom of the hill, stopping to lay one flat, weathered hand on the Falk sign by the gate, the way you would say goodbye to something you had loved and been betrayed by, something in him that had stayed patient all week went very still and very cold. This was the line the whole week had been walking toward. Not a filmed insult. A master craftsman thrown away. A mother frightened into silence. And rebuilt wrecks about to be sold as jewels to families who would trust the badge with their children's lives. He found Otto on the bench at the tram stop, box across his knees, staring at the traffic.
40 years, Otto said. Not bitter, just lost. I know every model this house ever sold, by the sound the door makes. He looked at the box. They promised me I'd hand over the first certified car. First job I ever had. I was younger than that apprentice, learning under a man who taught me you never sign what you haven't checked. I wanted my last job to be handing someone honest keys to an honest car. Yusuf sat down beside him. For a long moment, he said nothing. A tram sighed past and did not stop. "Otto," he said finally, and his voice had changed. Something underneath it had gone very quiet and very hard. "I need you to trust me for 2 days. Don't sign whatever they send you. Don't cash anything. And be at that gala on Friday night, in your good jacket, ready to walk back onto that floor when I come for you." Walk back and do what, my friend? They decided. People like them always win the night. "Not this night," Yusuf said, and put his hand over the old man's. 2 days, and after Friday, you will never again have to ask a boy like that for permission to matter. Then Yusuf walked to the quiet end of the platform, took the worn steel feeler gauge from his pocket, and turned it over in his fingers the way he had 45 years ago, the day a gruff master pressed it into a skinny apprentice's hand and told him it was a signature you could feel in the dark. He thought about a promise made across a workbench a lifetime ago, and he took out his phone and dialed the 2 numbers he had been saving all week. Claudia Reinhardt had run the Regional Vehicle Safety and Dealer Standards Authority for 11 years, had not been surprised by anything since the last recall scandal, and knew Yusuf Demir's voice the instant she heard it. "Tell me you're calling because you're bored," she said. "I'm calling because a 40-year-old house is about to sell rebuilt flood wrecks to families as certified cars at a gala on Friday, with the marquee's regional director standing next to the plinth," Yusuf said. A long pause. "How bad?" "Odometer fraud, title laundering, forged inspection certificates, salvage write-offs sold as one owner. I have 3 water cars badged on the floor and a flood total loss on the centerpiece plinth. I need it built so tight that no lawyer in a charcoal suit can lift it back off them." "Then we don't raid the place and hand them a headline about heavy-handed regulators," Claudia said, and he could hear her smiling for the first time. "We build the file. We move quietly. And on Friday, we let them pull the cover off the car for us, in front of every camera they invited." What followed, over 2 days, was the slow, patient work Otto had taught him a lifetime ago. You do not shout that a car is unsafe. You measure it, until the truth is too heavy for anyone to lift off you. First, the histories. Claudia's office pulled the full salvage auction and cross-border title records for every chassis number on the certified line. There it was, in cold data. 9 of the badged cars traced to write-off auctions in 3 countries, bought for scrap money, titles laundered through a shell trader, and the Crown, the flagship on the plinth, photographed to its door handles in floodwater 18 months earlier, declared a total loss, sold export only, not for road use. Second, the metal itself. Because a document can be forged, but a car cannot lie to a man with the right tools. Working after hours with a spare key and a forensic kit, Yusuf recorded it all. The paint depth gauge reading 4 times factory thickness over the rear quarters, where flood rot had been filled and resprayed. The tide line of dried silt inside the door sills. The green corrosion budding on the wiring looms. And the ECU download from the flagship side by side with the dash. 19,000 kilometers on the screen, 109,000, and a week underwater in the module's own memory. He photographed every door frame on the certified line, and the story the steel told was always the same. No oak leaf stamp anywhere. Otto Brandt, whose forged signature hung in every one of those paper files, had never laid a hand on a single one of these cars. Third, the paper trail of the cover-up. Transporter manifests logging night deliveries from the salvage trader. The internal message chain in which the finance chief told the detailer to lose the export-only tags before the cars hit the floor.
And, quietly retained through the authority, the forensic confirmation that the certificates bearing Otto's signature were forgeries, the signature scanned from an old genuine document and pasted onto sheets for cars he had never seen. But building a case in daylight is one thing. Keeping a secret from a frightened corner dealership with money to spend is another. And here, the week turned genuinely dangerous.
Because Max had done exactly what he promised. He had sent Yusuf's photograph to his father and to HR, demanding the insolent temp be fired and looked into. And Conrad Falk, who trusted no one and checked everything, did not simply fire the old man. He handed the photo to the security consultant the dealership kept on retainer and told him to find out who this trainee really was. Because something about a nobody who wasn't afraid had snagged in Conrad's careful mind. For 2 days, Yusuf felt the walls tighten. A man in a parked car photographed him leaving the staff entrance. If that thread were pulled hard enough, the whole cover would come apart before Friday. And a background built to survive a bored HR clerk was not built to survive a paid investigator. Yusuf called Claudia at midnight. They're digging. If Conrad learns there's a government inspector on his floor before the gala, he cancels the certified unveiling, quietly crushes the salvage cars, pays off the buyers who've already been sold one, and buries the whole thing. I stay a broke temp for 2 more days, or we lose it. Then they find exactly the broke temp we want them to find, Claudia said. The authorities' cover held. The investigator turned up a real dull work history under a real name. An overqualified older tradesman taking seasonal work after a quiet retirement. All true, all boring, all impenetrable. Reassured his son had merely been rude to a harmless old man, Conrad called off the search and told Max to stop crying about the help and sell cars. It was the last mistake the Falks would make before Friday.
Max made a mistake of his own. He tried to buy silence. He had realized, too late, that the apprentice, Lena Vogt, had been writing things down. Transporter times, plate numbers, the night the export tags were ground off. "You're clever," Max told her. "Clever people understand how the world actually works. The old man's finished either way." For one long moment, Lena thought about her mother, her brother, the rent, everything one wrong week could cost her. And then she thought about an old man in a gray suit who had knelt on the tiles to help her pick up dropped keys and told her that her hands were honest. "No," she said. Her voice shook, but she said it. "You want to know the difference between you and Otto? He taught me for free when I was nobody. You're only paying me now that I can hurt you. I'm not for sale." She walked away on legs that barely held her. And then, because courage grows the instant you use it, she went to the address on a card a quiet trainee had slipped her and gave the authority a full, dated statement with photographs of everything she had seen. It was Max's fatal error. He had not only forged and defrauded, he had now tried to buy false testimony in front of a young woman brave enough to report it. The file had grown its sharpest edge, and Max himself had handed it over. The emotional low came on Thursday. Otto's pension remained frozen, the negligence accusation still hung over his name, and a letter arrived offering him a small goodwill settlement if he signed away any claim and quietly agreed never to discuss workshop matters. The sound of a house buying a man's silence with a fraction of what it had stolen from him. He called Yusuf, hollow.
"I know you said wait, my friend," Otto said. "But maybe some fights you just lose. Maybe I sign their paper, take the little they're offering, and let an old man rest." "Don't sign it," Yusuf said, standing at his window, looking at the lit tower of the showroom on the hill. "One more day, Otto. Your word is about to be worth more than everything under that roof." That same night, the person Yusuf had been quietly waiting for made her choice. Nadia Hoffman appeared at the authorities' side office after dark, pale and shaking, with a document wallet clutched to her chest. "I signed one of them,"
she said, before anyone could speak. The flagship. I told myself the words were vague enough to survive. Then I went home, and I couldn't look at my daughter. She opened the wallet on the table. The true VIN histories she'd been ordered to delete and had hidden instead. The flood car diagnostic logs, her own photographs of silt lines and corroded looms taken on her phone in the workshop, and a signed statement withdrawing her certification of the flagship and naming precisely who had pressured her and how. I can't undo signing it, she said, but I can be the one who tells the truth before it kills someone, instead of after. Yusuf looked at the good woman who had folded under fear and then, at real cost, chosen to unfold, and thought that this, more than any gauge reading, was the repair that mattered most of all. You just did the bravest thing anyone in that building has done in years, he told her. Bring it Friday, all of it, and bring the courage with it.
By Thursday midnight, the pieces were laid out clean. The salvage titles, the ECU that remembered the flood, the forged certificates, the transporter manifests, a quality manager ready to withdraw her own signature in public, a brave apprentice's dated photographs, a framed master technician in his good jacket, and at the center of it, one arrogant young man who was about to stand at a microphone in front of 200 journalists and personally vouch for a car that had drowned. All that was left was to let him pull the cover off it. Friday night, the great glass showroom of Falk Automobile blazed like a jewel box. Under the brushed steel motto, Ein Falk hält, was verspricht, 200 chairs had been set in tidy rows, a stage, a podium, a microphone. On its slowly revolving turntable sat the new flagship, and beside it, veiled under midnight blue silk on its own plinth, the crowning centerpiece, the Falk certified signature car, the jewel of the whole program. In the front row sat the important people, the Mark's regional director, the city dignitaries, the motoring press with their recorders running, Conrad Falk in a charcoal suit with 2 lawyers beside him checking their watches, and in a plain gray suit near the back, a service cloth folded over one arm, stood the man they had spent all week calling the temp, with a worn steel feeler gauge in his pocket, and seated quietly beside him where he had insisted they be, Otto Brandt in his good jacket, Nadia with her document wallet, and Lena with her notebook. The evening began the way every Max Falk production began. The regional director praised 40 years of Falk reliability. Conrad gave a warm, gracious speech about trust being the only thing a family name is really worth. And then Max took the stage to unveil the certified program and its jewel.
Some people, Max said, gripping the microphone, are just built to lead. My family built this house on a promise that a Falk keeps its word. Tonight, I'm proud to put my own name behind every car in our new certified program. He gestured at the veiled plinth. His eyes found the gray suit at the back, and he could not resist. We even let people in off the street to gawk at cars like these. A ripple of uneasy laughter. He gripped the silk. He pulled the cover off. And from the back of the room, into the applause, a calm voice said, "Stop." It was not loud, but it carried, the way a true thing carries, and it stopped the applause dead. Yusuf Demir walked down the center aisle. He did not hurry. He set a phone on the podium and pressed a button, and a voice came clear into the silent hall. "This is Directorine Claudia Reinhardt, Regional Vehicle Safety and Dealer Standards Authority. As of this evening, Falk Automobile's certification license is under formal suspension pending a fraud investigation. My senior field inspector is in the room. Please give him your full attention." Max laughed once, high and confused. "This is a private event. Somebody get the temp off the—" "My name," Yusuf said, reaching the stage, "is Yusuf Demir.
For 12 years, I have been the senior field inspector for the National Motor Trade Standards Authority. My signature is what the word certified is supposed to mean. And I have spent this week on your floor, in this suit, measuring your cars and your men. He turned to the room. Don't take my word for any of it. That's the whole point. Put your hands on the metal. The regional director had gone very still. Conrad Falk's lawyers had stopped checking their watches.
"This is the jewel of your certified program," Yusuf said, and laid one hand on the unveiled car. "Herr Falk says he stands behind it personally." He opened the driver's door. 40 years, every car that left this house truly inspected carried a mark, a stamp, an oak leaf and 2 initials punched inside the doorframe by the master of Bay 9, where no polish reaches and no buyer looks. He beckoned the nearest journalist. "Reach in." Nothing. "Smooth," Yusuf said. No mark. "The paper file swears Otto Brandt certified this car with his own hand. The steel says he never touched it." He took the worn feeler gauge from his pocket and slid it into the seam along the hood, where it sank far too deep. Then pressed a paint depth gauge to the rear quarter and turned the screen to the room. 4 times factory thickness. Filler. Rot. Filled and resprayed. He ran a gloved finger inside the door sill and held it up, gray with dried silt. Floodline. This car sat in standing water to its handles. He plugged his tablet into the port and put the screen on the plinth for the cameras. The dash reads 19,000 kilometers. The engine's own memory, which the people who rolled it back didn't know keeps its own count, remembers 109,000, and a week underwater. You can polish a lie until it blinds you. You cannot polish away a gap. The metal remembers. A murmur was rising, ugly and turning. "There's more, and none of it needs my word," Yusuf said. He nodded, and Nadia Hoffman rose, pale but steady, and laid her document wallet open on the podium. "I'm the quality manager. I was ordered to certify this car. I signed under threat, and I was wrong to." Lena stood beside her. "I'm an apprentice. I wrote down every night the salvage cars came in and the export tags were ground off." And from the authorities' file, Yusuf laid down the rest, page by page. The room had stopped murmuring. It had gone silent, because everyone finally understood this was not a stunt. It was a reckoning, delivered by a man who held every document, every gauge reading, and the legal authority to make all of it stick. Conrad Falk rose smoothly from the front row, spreading his hands, warm and reasonable. "Herr Demir, clearly there have been errors below stairs. A rogue trader, an overzealous manager. Let us be sensible men. I know people who sit on your authority's oversight board. Name a figure, name a role, name a resolution that lets everyone leave here with their dignity, and it is done tonight. Everything can be arranged." The whole room heard it. The owner of the house, in front of 200 witnesses and a live line to the regulator, trying to buy the inspector, 90 seconds after being exposed. A few people actually gasped at the nakedness of it. "That," Yusuf said quietly, "is exactly the thing I came here to find out. Whether the word above your door still meant anything money couldn't touch." He looked at the steel letters. "A Falk keeps his promise." Your father meant those words. You've been selling them for parts. And here, Conrad Falk showed the room what he truly was. He looked for one cold second at his son, frozen on the stage, and chose the franchise. "Then let the record show," he said, turning to the regional director, his voice gone flat and pragmatic, "that the certified program was my son's initiative, his sourcing, his signatures to chase." He did not look at Max again. He was already calculating which parts of the wreck could be saved, exactly as he had taught his son to do, and finding that the only part worth saving was himself.
"Dad," Max said. The microphone caught it. "Dad, you told me to make the numbers. You told me not to ask." Conrad said nothing at all. And Max Falk, who had never in his life heard the word no, finally heard it. From the regulator, from the press, from his own father's turned back, all at once. "You can't do this to me," Max whispered. "Do you know who I am? My name is on the—" "I know exactly who you are," Yusuf said, almost gently. "The question all week was whether you knew who you were being cruel to. You didn't, because you never once looked at the person in front of you. The old customer who only wanted to feel the breaks. The master who taught this whole house to be honest. The apprentice, the temp. You only ever looked at what they could do for you. That is why you lost. Not because you weren't rich enough, because you weren't careful enough to be kind. The one gap you never measured was the one in yourself." Max looked around the glass room for the crew who had laughed at every joke and found them studying the floor. He looked for his father and found Conrad murmuring to a lawyer, already half turned away. And in the middle of the anniversary gala, beneath the name his grandfather had bolted to the roof, Maximilian Falk understood that he had spent his whole life surrounded by people, and not one of them was standing with him, because he had never once stood with anyone else.
Off the stage, at the edge of the crowd, Bruno Adler had risen without meaning to. Max's eyes, wild now, landed on him. The old man in the worn cap he had turned away days ago. And in a last, broken reflex to look like a salesman in front of the cameras, he snatched the keys off the plinth and thrust them out toward Bruno. "You wanted to drive one so badly. Here, take it, test it, it's yours." Bruno looked at the drowned car and at the shaking keys and did the one thing Max had never once done for anyone. He was kind and he was honest. "Son," Bruno said quietly, "I wouldn't put my wife's memory in that car." He did not take the keys. No one did. Max stood on the stage holding them out to a room full of people who would not close their hands. The mirror of the morning he had tossed his keys at a man he took for nobody. Security, the authorities officers now, moving on Claudia's quiet signal, stepped toward the stage. But Yusuf was not finished, because a true ending is not only about who falls, it is about who rises. He stepped off the stage and crossed to Otto Brandt, who was gripping his cap, trying not to weep, and failing. "Otto," Yusuf said, and his own voice finally cracked. "I couldn't tell you. Forgive me." He crouched, took the worn steel feeler gauge from his pocket, and turned it over in the light. 45 years ago, a gruff old master caught a skinny Turkish kid retorquing a wheel some qualified man had rushed. Instead of firing him, he taught him. He put this in the boy's hand and told him it was a signature you could feel in the dark. He said, "You never sign what you haven't checked. Not for any manager, not for any price." He pressed the gauge into Otto's palm. "I've spent my whole life keeping that promise. I am that boy, Otto. Everything I am, you built. The same way you built the only honest thing left under this roof." Otto stared at him, and at the gauge, and 45 years landed on him at once. Yusuf stood and turned to the room. Otto Brandt is cleared, effective tonight. The loose wheel was a fabrication. The footage and the records prove it. He paused. And there is more. When this house is rebuilt honest, and it will be, under new standards and worker-led inspection, its certification will carry one mark, the Brandt mark. That oak leaf becomes the official stamp of every car inspected here, and Otto Brandt heads the independent inspection that grants it. His hidden signature, the one a forger couldn't fake because he didn't know it existed, becomes the public standard. His name won't be on the roof. Then Yusuf found Lena. "The night this turned," he said, "a young apprentice was offered enough money to change her family's life if she'd sign a lie. And she said no, then told the truth on the record.
That is the rarest thing in this whole building. He announced it plainly, a permanent apprenticeship and a fully funded place in the Master Technician and Safety Engineering program. On merit, earned by the best hands in this workshop, not charity. Lena pressed both hands over her mouth. Nadia Hoffman, Yusuf went on, folded under threat, and then, at real cost, chose to unfold. She is reinstated as head of quality, with the authority to halt any sale in this building, and no owner's signature able to overrule a safety hold again. Nadia wept, and this time it was not from fear.
And finally, Yusuf walked to Bruno Adler. You came in to buy a safe car for the drives you used to take with your wife, and you were told people like you don't test drive cars like these. He did not offer him a car. A man's dignity is not repaid with a gift. The new independent inspection panel needs a voice that answers only to the customer, someone whose whole life was keeping strangers safe on the road. If you'll take it, that seat is yours, not as a favor. Bruno, who had come only to feel the brakes, shook the inspector's hand and could not speak. The crowd came apart into noise, staff on their feet, journalists forgetting to record because they were too busy watching. Every family who had already been sold a certified Falk, Yusuf announced, would be contacted, their cars re-inspected free, and every fraudulent sale refunded in full. That was not a gift either, but the plainest justice there is. The certification license stayed suspended. The fraud went to the prosecutors. The workshop passed that night into the hands of the people who had never stopped being honest in it. At the back of the glass hall, quietly, Conrad Falk and his lawyers were escorted out one door, already negotiating. Max was escorted out another, no longer the face on the billboard, just a young man who had never been told no, holding a set of keys no one would take. Max Falk had his name on the roof, a supercar that could outrun anything, and a father who owned half the trade. Otto Brandt had a worn steel feeler gauge, 40 years of a stamp hidden inside strangers' doors, and a rule he never once broke. You never sign what you haven't checked. Only one of them could still look the room in the eye when the covers came off. So here is the question I want you to answer in the comments. Was Yusuf right to spend the whole week undercover in a borrowed suit, or should he have shown his badge and shut the place down the very first morning, in the forecourt, the moment they turned an old man away? Tell me below. And if you believe a promise should be measured by the metal and not the marketing, subscribe and stay for the next one. The celebrated head chef who humiliated the silent dishwasher at the pass, never once suspecting whose kitchen it really was and whose name was on the star. You will not believe how that one is served.